I'm with David D'Angelo, who is an entrepreneur, someone who's been mentoring people. He's been mentored. He's got like a great story. David, can you just give me a brief introduction of who you are and how you fit into this sort of entrepreneurial world?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I really appreciate the opportunity to engage with you in this session. I'm Dave D'Angelo, and for the last couple of years, I've been working with VentureWell and leading their E-Teams program. And this is a program that's focused on providing support to science and technology innovators who are commercializing hardware-based innovations that address global challenges. So I spend most of my time with university students, mostly graduate students who have a lot of tech ideas and help them bring those tech ideas to market.
So I want to go backwards in your life. You know, you've been an entrepreneur over the years. Like when you started, like tell me your story. Like the other day you were telling me your story about how you started entering into the entrepreneurship world as an entrepreneur and the people who sort of like made a difference in your life. Can you like give me some example of a story you could tell about when you first realized how important these mentors were to you?
You know, it's really funny because when I first landed in Salt Lake City to run an entrepreneurship program for refugees, I didn't know what an entrepreneur was. And because I didn't know a lot about entrepreneurship, the first thing I did was go on LinkedIn and stalked about 300 CEOs who were based in Salt Lake City, and decided to meet with about half of them over coffee. And over time developed really strong relationships with dozens of these individuals who were entrepreneurs. And 6 months down the line, as I analyzed my friend group, I realized that everyone in that group was an entrepreneur except for me. And that was a really powerful revelation. And it motivated me to want to become an entrepreneur because these are people that I really looked up to and I found inspiration from. So it really spoke to the power of networks and just trying to surround yourself with not only people who are going to lift you up, but make you better than you are right now.
Is there any particular conversation that you walked away like totally inspired that just sort of like, oh my God,
Oh,
the person I need to listen to?
absolutely. So one of my friends, Jeremy Andrus, he was the CEO of Skull Candy, and currently he's the CEO of Traeger Grills. Um, he was an angel investor in my first business, but before I decided to buy a one-way ticket to Nepal to start my venture, he connected me with someone named Robert Workman. And Robert was the founder of Goal Zero, which was a portable energy company that was the ninth fastest growing company in America in 2009. And I was invited to go meet with him at the 2014 Outdoor Retailer. And I sat down with him and I started to talk to him about my ambitious plans to go to Nepal to start this venture. And he interrupted me minutes into my conversation with him to say, Dave, if not you, who? If not now, when? And that phrase right there really motivated me to take action and be decisive and pursue everything with a deep sense of urgency. Before that, everything felt like it was an excuse, right? Preventing me from actually taking that leap.
So this notion of believing in you, you're not an entrepreneur, you're about to like jump over the cliff. Like, what was it that he saw in you that got him to say, not you, who else would do that? Now, does it mean that who else is crazy enough to do that versus like you have something inside of you that's going to make this work? What do you think was coming in, was in his brain about that?
Yeah, it's hard to speak on behalf of Jeremy, but I will say this: like, there's certainly there was a novelty to the type of venture I was starting. It was deeply uncommon for people to be social entrepreneurs at that time, and in Salt Lake City, in the process of going to a place like Nepal. I think Jeremy saw a couple of things in me. He saw that I was deeply curious. I had this obsession with curiosity. I was always asking lots of questions so that I could suck as much information from him as possible. He saw that I had energy and enthusiasm, and that was deeply connected to the passion that I shared for this idea. He also saw that I was someone who was willing to connect with everyone and anyone at any time. I was trying to touch base with as many people as I could because I felt like there was so much to learn from everyone in the room. And Jeremy is someone who really believes in the power of networks. So I think for those reasons, he was willing to take a chance on me.
So you go over there, you sort of drop into this developing country to sort of launch this venture. How did you utilize mentors, either in Salt Lake City with Jeremy or over there, to sort of help fuel your energy? Or did you not do that? Did you do it or not?
I did it. I just didn't do it as well as I should have. I'm in an environment with poor internet connectivity and so much on my plate in terms of trying to understand the culture and the regulatory environment there. I will say this though, I had put together an informal advisory board, and I would connect with them at least on a monthly basis to share our plans and get strategic insight. But every week I would also try to touch base with one or two people who had expertise in areas where I felt weak, and establishing a cadence or a continuity to those engagement was really great because as an entrepreneur, a lot of times you just spend all of your time with that same one or two people, and you get tunnel vision and you forget to kind of stand up and look around. And that's, I think, a really powerful role that mentors and advisors can play. They can help you scan the ecosystem and look more strategically and tactically at some of the problems that you face and give you a fresh perspective that you may not get when you're kind of boots on the ground and in an operational mode.
So when you're an entrepreneur in a foreign country, but also just an entrepreneur in general, and you're talking to so many people and you saw the value of different people, in the field we call it mentor whiplash. Someone says one thing, someone says another. How do you know how to sort of navigate those conflicts of ideas or advice to do the right thing?
This is a really philosophical and challenging question, and I think it becomes easier as you get older and more mature in your career to really hone in on the one or two people you want to listen to with some consistency. I was burdened with getting way too much feedback and ideas early on in my career. There's the like 10 or 12 super smart people, all from Harvard, HBS, throwing me in different directions, and I didn't know what direction to go in. And what it ultimately came down to, though, was is there a cultural and personality fit with these individuals, and are they speaking from a place of credibility? And like, if I'm going to place a bet on 1 out of 5 of these people, who is it going to be? So trying to set some type of prioritization matrix that accounts for personality and the connection that you feel with that person, and also how their experience can be complementary in your pathway as an innovator, I think is an extremely important dynamic to consider.
So when you think about, let's fast forward to where you are today. I may go back again, but let's think about you as a mentor, or actually as a person who crafts programs that assigns mentors. So one of the things about mentorship is, I think, some of the best mentors you find, but now they get assigned in programs that you're doing at VentureWell or other programs. What do you think? How's that dynamic with someone who you're assigned to, and how do you help these mentors provide real value, even though it was an organic creation of a relationship?
Yeah, I don't think the assigning mentors works, and here's why. I think if an assignment's going to happen, that person has to have some type of specialized skill set, right? And so if someone is needing help with finance, they can go to this finance person. There's going to be an assignment made between those people for them to connect. But for me, like, a mentor is more of like a generalist, and there has to be some type of organic process that enables the relationship to grow over time. And if you don't have that personal connection to to that other individual, in the long term, it's going to be really hard to stick it out together. And I think that a lot of great mentor-mentee relationships, they stand the test of time. And the probability, or the success probability is much lower in that assignment model than it would be if you were to try to organically put together those relationships. But if you apply some type of specialization and categorize those and then make those assignments based on the needs of that startup, then I think there's enough relevancy to have that conversation be beneficial for both parties.
What should be, someone who wants to be a mentor, obviously sometimes it just happens, you called all these people that sort of talk with you, and out of that, you kind of pulled out some great mentors for you. But if I want to help people who are sort of a younger version of me, what kind of guidelines do you give to me as I sort of meet with people for the first time or the second time, or building that mentor-mentee relationship and helping them launch a company? Like, what advice do you have for me as a mentor?
The best advice is to shut up and listen. It's just so important to hear out the entrepreneur, to ask thoughtful questions, to pursue that with an encouraging tone, but also to be decisive and provide direction, right? And I think it's also important to take a hardline approach in that conversation, and really push that individual on some of the gaps that you see in their business. Some of the best mentors that I have, like Mark Casibo who just exited Traeger Grills, every time I get on the phone with him, he goes right to the heart of the problems that I'm facing without even having a conversation with me previously. He just knows exactly what I'm struggling with, and we dig deep on that. And there's immense value in just getting to the heart of the problem and having the ability to really get a sense for what that is through that process of inquiry, which is so critical to the start of those conversations.
I've heard this many times. You asked me to be a mentor, not you, but someone asked me to be a mentor because of my expertise. You want me to listen more than talk, but then I need to be directional and push them hard. Like, what's the balance between all of that, to be that listener, but also really holding their feet to the fire to make sure they're doing the right thing, whatever the right thing is? Obviously, there is no right thing. There's only the thing that actually moves their company forward. But what's that balance, and how do you deal with that balance?
Yeah, those two are very interrelated, right? Because you can't provide solid direction without having sufficient information. And so, in like putting on your customer discovery hat or your mentor discovery hat, you're just trying to collect as much information that you can so that you can deliver more relevant and useful advice to that mentee. And so if you were to get put in a 30-minute call with a mentee, I would spend the first 10 minutes asking questions to learn more about that project. I would spend the following 10 minutes working on, through some specific challenges or opportunities for that venture. And then the last 10 minutes I would spend putting together an action plan and some next steps, and clearly determining what milestones that team needs to hit, and also some expectations around how we're going to circle back so that there's some accountability and cadence in the relationship.
And when you mentor people or see people in mentor programs like the ones that you run, what sort of delineates between those who make no progress or little progress and those people who excel in terms of mentorship?
I've looked at hundreds of surveys from our innovators, and also the scorecards that instructors use to assess the quality and stage of development of our teams. And one word really sticks out, and that one word is coachability. Being coachable is just so critical to being
compassionate, curious, creative, someone who's willing to take in information, digest it thoroughly, practice quality of thought and articulating what they've learned, seeking out advice from others so that they can build on their ideas. Being coachable is by far one of the most important attributes that an entrepreneur can assume.
And so with being coachable, does that, to some people who think they know everything, you take a young entrepreneur, like I know all the answers, and you ask, like, I need to be coachable. Like, what's the balance between being driven, passionate, focused, and also being open-minded enough to take in insights and do something with it? Like, where's the balance for the entrepreneur in that way?
Well, you could be passionate, but you should never assume the mentality of, hey, I know everything. Because another really important characteristic for every successful entrepreneur is humility. I think the great entrepreneurs know that they don't know everything, and they're willing to admit it. And that is what drives them to be better listeners, regardless of who they're talking to. If it's a janitor or a restaurant clerk or a UPS driver, everyone comes with a different perspective. They've got something to teach you, just like you have something to teach them. And so I really think that's important. And you've got to, of course, be passionate, but never let that passion drive an overly confident individual, because if you're overly confident, then you might also be compromising a lot of the information that's going to provide strategic guidance on how to drive the business, right? You can't be a know-it-all. You have to be someone who's just constantly seeking more and more information and finding input from other individuals who can help develop that confidence with the information that you have. And if it is a know-it-all, I would ask them to prove it.
Yeah. But so if I'm an entrepreneur and somehow I've been convinced that having a great mentor is important to me. I like the thing that you did out in Salt Lake City, where you actually found people and interviewed them and talked to them about what they do and what they're good at. What should I be looking for when I'm searching around for someone who can actually teach me, help me, guide me, listen to me, push me? Like, what should I mean, those are some things that you mentioned. What should I be looking for, and how should I know whether the chemistry is right?
Yeah. So a lot of this is about chemistry, and I kind of liken it to a dating app, right? Dating apps are pretty ubiquitous. You go on these apps, you connect with people. You might feel some chemistry over like LinkedIn or Tinder or whatever. You meet in person, and the connection just isn't there. And you just know right away. There's something inside of you that says, I just don't think this is the type of person that I want to spend a lot of time around. It was great knowing them, but I think I'm going to look elsewhere. It's really similar with mentor-mentee relationships. You've got to be in the fire with that individual and really get a sense for their personality, their style, and then assess from there if you think that they have values that really align with yours, right? If you really value service or humility or optimism, maybe target people who have that, think and try to set some priorities around those values and ask questions to get a sense of if that mentor has those qualities. Because I do think that cultural fit is what's going to drive longevity in that relationship.
Oh, that's great. Is there anything I should have asked you that I haven't yet about mentorship, being a mentor, being a mentee, or something I didn't ask you that I should have?
Yeah, I would ask the question of when a mentorship is not going right, what do you do?
Yeah, good question. I'll ask you that question. So what do you do when you hit a wall? You've got the 3 sessions, you've hit a wall, and like, I don't think this is working. How do you get out of it, or what should I do?
Yeah. You know, if mentorship isn't going well one-on-one, there are a couple things that you can do. Um, I would say first step, you could try to organize like a larger meeting and pull in someone who might be able to balance out that other person, because perhaps they perform a certain way in a one-on-one environment that they may not perform as in a group dynamic. So trying to pull in a third party to see if that shifts the dynamics could be an approach to take, and a non-threatening first step, right? Because the other option is, I'm going to cut the string and I'm no longer going to work with this person. And that's a harder conversation. And if you do have to have that conversation, I think the conversation is around, hey, I've really valued my experience with you. I've learned a lot. Our needs have changed as a business, and we've got to start spending more time with other individuals who have different skills than you. Love to stay in touch, but we've got to start prioritizing these other engagements moving forward. And that could be a way to back away from it if it's just not working out.
Great, that's very helpful. One more question, quick question. What's your big advice to entrepreneurs as they're thinking about their venture and moving things forward? It's like one big piece of advice that you want to send to anyone who's an entrepreneur, whether it's in Macedonia or in South America or wherever. What's one piece of advice that you wish you had when you started, or that you think that's really important?
Yeah. In my 7 years as an entrepreneur, I've really found that one of the most important things you can do is never lose enthusiasm. And in everything that you do, you have to exercise urgency. You have to have an urgency to learn, an urgency to create, an urgency to collaborate, an urgency to problem solve. That urgency really needs to drive you, and you need to maintain that high level of enthusiasm through the ups and downs in order to sustain your commitment, in order to make your idea into something special.
Great. Thank you very much, David. I really appreciate your time and your commitment to the next stage of entrepreneurs, the next generation. And I appreciate all your work at VentureWell and individually. And it's been great chatting with you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Steve.